Hello everybody, Mike Levin on Sunday, June 12th, 2022. And yesterday I responded to viewer ZoroNoah01, who basically created an open invitation to just talk about tech and OSs, which, as it will, takes me from Unix to Linux to some of my favorite stories of bizarre alternative tech that could have shaped our world differently were it to set in and have become kind of the C-Unix combination we have today that became the center line of the average distribution curve. Most things today are because of C and Unix. And it could have been Lisp, an alternative potential timeline based on the work of the folks in the early days of the MIT Media Lab. John McCarthy, I remember his name. So ZoroNoah writes back today, a whole video for me. I am really thankful. I enjoyed it fully, especially your take on information and it being the fourth force. I found that really interesting. Your phrase, "You can't read information without executing it," hit me so hard, and I really loved it. Thank you for the book recommendations. By the way, I've noticed that almost all computer scientists are fans of sci-fi. I'm not a big reader and I've never read sci-fi, but I will make sure to read all the books you recommended. I've only read Orwell's 1984 so far, starting with dystopian books and leaving Vinge for the end. So, we must consider ourselves lucky because technology didn't bring us demise as of now. And it's also kind of funny to learn that most of the amazing technologies we have now are created unintentionally. Also, I would like to hear your take on artificial general intelligence and how close do you think we are to attaining it? Thanks again for your time. Wow, what a setup. Thank you, ZoroNoah01. I could not have thought of a better setup for a next thing to talk about. Sometimes the hardest thing on these drives is to talk about technology and not the things that are most top of my mind in my life because, you know, that's not for the YouTubes. So, yeah, we consider ourselves lucky. We are lucky. We are deeply and fortunately lucky. Starting with the survival of filter events. We are a tested species, all right? So I'm not going to say that there's a galactic federation or what have you, but if there were one and they were observing us, they would certainly have cheered us for that first filter event survival. That is another thing close to objective truth. We don't know a lot of things for sure, but we do know that having achieved as a species the ability to destroy ourselves and to have not done so is a large check mark in the positive column. And there have likely been others, you know, probably most of them related to that first breakthrough, but nonetheless, we will have more still. And before I go into the GAI, the General Artificial Intelligence question, I will go first into the unintentional aspect part of technology. Yeah, it's a funny thing about solutions, about scratching an itch, okay? So the best inventions come from people who have an itch they're scratching. That's the expression that's used, I guess, in the field. I don't know, in life. If you have an itch, you scratch it. And you scratch it by building a better mousetrap. And your perspective is different from anyone who ever came before you in history. No one has ever been in your exact situation. There could be parallels, there could be similarities, but the problems facing you, where you are in life, the tools and resources that you have at your disposal, that particular combination has never occurred before, ever. Consequently, when you try to think of a solution, you might just come up with one that nobody has thought of before, or nobody has had the bravery or the stupidity, not knowing enough to know better. Probably many of the best inventions that have not occurred are because the people who thought of them invalidated them in their own minds based on stuff they knew or stuff they thought they knew. You know, Steve Jobs, so many discussions come back to him because, he never accepted what people told him was possible or not. People would say, no, you can't do that. And he would say, oh, there's no more room in this prototype of the iPod. And he would walk over to a fish tank. Who knows if this is true or not? And he dropped it into the fish tank. He leaned forward and looked, and he called the engineer over and he said, look, you see those bubbles coming out? That means there's more room in there. Get rid of the bubbles. And they got the iPod smaller. This was in the early days when there was like a little hard drive in there, the white ones with a round wheel on it. Do people even remember those? To me, those are still like new inventions. So that kind of pushback against what people say is possible is always wise, because the rules do change. Yesterday's common wisdom is tomorrow's foolish stubbornness, because technology hockey stick advancement curve. I was going through the Raspberry Pi unboxing comments from 10 years ago, 2012, and someone was saying it's hard to believe that an SD card can hold a terabyte on it. And I responded to them saying, yeah, to our children it's going to be surprising it could only hold a terabyte. Information density is one of the things that all bets are off. We talk about Moore's Law. You get about twice the computing power every year and a half at the same price. And then there was everyone saying, oh, Moore's Law is over. But honestly, Moore's Law had a very Intel Corporation lean to it, because it was Jeffrey Moore, one of the founders of Intel, who coined that phrase. And it was always believed to be, faster, hotter. And that was, I can't say Intel's demise, because, they're still a massive corporation. But that general thinking has wrongly set the expectations. And back to science fiction, Isaac Asimov's foundation, the forever miniaturization, the forever smaller footprint of an object and smaller power consumption. Do more with less and make that smaller thing require less power to do the same thing. And Moore's Law can be overcome in a variety of ways, once you top out the technology and, you can't layer things any deeper, or it's so small that quantum tunneling introduces unreliability. You change it from electrons to photons and stuff like that, and just Moore's Law resets itself and you can keep going. So there's a certain class of technology that just takes high-level money, investment, research, and they're not just scratching an itch. Getting down to the 5 nanometer scale for manufacturing is one of these types of things. The process, if you hear about it, is unbelievable. They shoot out a element of, I'm not sure, it might be mercury, and they hit it with a laser beam, and then the light that gets emitted has some special property. And only in this way, from this one company that has manufactured this device, can they get down to the 5 nanometer scale. And it's an extraordinary technology that seems like it has taken extraordinary, effort and, pushes the boundaries of physics. It's given another 5 years. There's going to be, 3 or 4 more ways to do it that don't have, all that complexity, that don't have all that weirdness to it. And, that'll be rinse and repeat. But those are large organizations, lots of funding, lots of research, lots of science that goes into it. And then you've got innovations like what Vint Cerf did for creating the TCP/IP network stack. I've also had the request to talk about networking. So there's been a lot of networking over the years, and I've had exposure to some of it. I remember Token Ring. There was something called Token Ring that came before TCP/IP, and it all used the same kinds of cables. It all worked over Ethernet cables, which was kind of like a phone line cable. It alternatively could use cable television type wire, coax. So this stuff could work over coax or over RJ47. And termination was a big deal. Things had to be terminated correctly. If you could take down the whole network by unplugging something and not putting a terminator in there. It was really weird. Or taking a terminator out where there was one, the whole network could come down. And Token Ring, yeah, getting the Amigas to network. Amiga computer never really became good at networking in my time. It might have come later, but TCP/IP came onto the scene just after I was, just after the Amiga was dying, like 91, 92. It's really no big coincidence that Linux was invented in 91, which removed the intellectual property encumbering of Unix, because at this time Unix was still bogged down with intellectual property issues. So you couldn't just put Unix on your x86 computer, which is what everyone had. I guess they were 486s at the time. This was before the Pentium. This was just before Pentium, and they changed the naming system. So when Linux came out, and it was the perfect host machine for TCP/IP networking because it was allowed to get out, because the innovations that were made for a network called ARPANET by the Department of Defense, the United States Department of Defense, DOD, DARPA, alternatively. They needed a networking system that was impervious to nuclear attack. That's what it was. So these are highly told stories. I guess I should get on with it quickly. But, you talk about righteous feedback loops. The righteous feedback loop was putting TCP/IP networking on Linus Torvalds' new operating system, new Unix clone called Linux. And then, the Mozilla browser, Mozilla early web browser came out. It wasn't called Firefox at the time. And then I guess one of the commercial ones that they put in the store, it was called Netscape Navigator. That came out. And the web was born. It was perfect timing. It was a perfect storm. All these things kind of worked together in a delightful way that was quite unstoppable. It was not particularly loved by corporate America. Bill Gates did not want Netscape to fulfill Sun's assertion that the network is the computer. If the network is the computer, then what does that make Microsoft's products? Nothing. So Microsoft rushed out Internet Explorer and in various ways subverted Netscape. Sorry, give me a moment here while I get my code. Boop, 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 boop. I should memorize it by now. I should just write it on my dashboard. I need to do that. But over the years, it really wasn't only Microsoft who was opposed to this giant revolution. It was also Oracle. So Linux, Apache, MySQL, and various P languages. I know I've said Perl, and I've used PHP in there. Python also belongs there, and Ruby is an honorary additional P language. So Oracle bought MySQL. Oracle bought MySQL. And it's not that it's no longer in free and open source. It's not like they could take back the old licenses. It's that this puts a certain tarnish on it. Nobody wants to use MySQL anymore. They've all moved to Postgres. Everyone who is using MySQL, who has a choice now, has moved along mostly to Postgres. Let me see. Is that a surprise? It should not be. It's not the first time it happened. So there's technology called NoSQL, and it sounds all fancy, but really all it is the fact that when things are not row and column, like in Microsoft Excel and SQL databases with rows and columns, right? The records are the rows, the fields are the columns, right? So that's a very, very common model for databases. How could it not be? It's like a spreadsheet ledger in business, right? Spreadsheets keep numbers in rows and columns. So much of technology puts their data in rows and columns to reflect the ledgers of spreadsheets before spreadsheets were digital. But that is not the only, and it is far from the best way of doing these things. As I've talked about in prior videos, key value pairs are just as good. In fact, all the row and column stuff is built from key value pair stuff. It's more fundamental. In fact, this video is just recently on the tail of one where I talked about S functions? Is it S functions? Of Lisp. Same thing as an associative array or an associative table, which is roughly the same thing as a linked list, or the atomic components of a linked list. So all you need is a very simple data structure, something on the left and something on the right. And then anything can be associated to anything, because stuff on the left could be associated to another object on the right, which in turn would have stuff on the left associated to another object on the right. And in this way, you can build up larger and larger structures. Excuse me while I make sure the battery keeps going. I think I got it. If this stops abruptly, you'll know it's just because the battery ran out. I'm looking for ways to just prop my phone while I continue. Improvised way, that's fine. Dodge that bullet, huh? I'm gonna keep going. Life is that way. Have a video of a dropped phone in it, okay? That's fine, I don't mind. I can live with that. But what's better? Nope, I can't put it back there. And I don't want to break it into two because I'm on a roll. I can put it here using that. Sure, that'll work. All right, so I'm gonna have to fit a canoe in there. Not on this trip. But I will be sorting stuff out. Okay. Linked lists, right? Yeah. Better ways of doing database stuff. Oh yeah, Berkeley DB. So we think that NoSQL is a new concept. We think, oh, it's this new thing with these new brands of databases that came out in the free and open source world. There's MongoDB, there's CouchDB, and there is Redis, not Reddit, but Redis. And I guess those are three of the big ones that come to mind. But before all those, there was DBM program just bundled with Unix. Unix had one of these key value pair databases just built in. And then the people at Berkeley said, hey, we can make this big and scale it. So back in, I don't know, it must have been the 70s or 80s, I have to get the dates down, they improved this thing so much that it brought NoSQL to the world way sooner than Oracle was ready. So Oracle bought Berkeley DB. You can Google this. And it went the way of MySQL. But before the internet and web was a big thing, so nobody knew it. So Oracle was able to just deep six a competitive tech, just like that. And, you know, things do reoccur, convergent evolution and all that. And so convergent evolution brought back the concept of NoSQL in later years, and everyone thought it was this new thing, but it was nothing new. And so that happens. And so one of the biggest things about the internet is that these things can't be suppressed anymore, including the internet itself. There have been attempts to suppress the internet. In fact, people would argue that what we have today is not the internet, that the original internet of yore is gone. I just don't think so. I think it being based on the TCP/IP network as it is, and with so many different ways to get onto the internet, and the routing system, how I can go through this network and that and follow different routes. What people are complaining about, where the problem is to get broadband internet today capable of living up to the new expectations that have been set. You're paying no less than $100 a month. That is the problem. The problem is the nearly $100 a month barrier to entry. It makes it kind of a rich person thing. So this is where you start to get tested with this stuff with unpacking, because all the initial stuff has all the nice open shelves. Now I have to start, jiggering it around, and to keep the video running smoothly, I'm gonna want to do it in there. So pardon me for a moment. If this were Android, I could hit the pause button. I definitely did not prepare well enough bringing one of the phone recording arms. Maybe I'll use this guy. He's capable of holding a phone, right? I just need to put the phone in his mouth like that, and then hold that onto something, and maybe put that up here. I talk about long tail a lot. Whoops. And here is a long tail book by Chris Anderson. I believe this might even be a signed copy. No, this is not a signed copy. Oh well. But my Hittail product was based off of the concepts in this book. And it's really about that average distribution curve. They talk about the 1 over x curve. They talk about the power law curve. So a lot of things in technology are really because of mathematical patterns that are always reoccurring. And when you say 1 over x, it's literally plotting 1 over x. So if you take 1 and you, I guess that's divide it by x, 1 divided by 2, and you plot that at where 1 is, and then you take, 1 divided by 3, and you plot the output where 3 is, you get this dramatic curve where it infinitely slopes up towards the axis of 0 here, and then it infinitely slopes out towards infinity in that direction, but it never touches the line that represents the 0 value on the x, and it never touches the line that represents the 0 value on the y. It goes like that. So it's a dramatic curve with a lot of properties that are noteworthy. The most noteworthy property that really made it a concept that was hot in marketing for a little while was that it represents the infinite variety of product that's available, the infinite ideation of people, the infinite creation of things, and so much so that there's always a market for something. If someone's producing it, you can find someone to buy it, so long as the marketplace is approaching perfect. The more perfect the marketplace, the more perfect the search tools to look for things like your taste in music. They used Sam Goody a lot in the examples there because it was a store that was going out of business because they could only carry as much music as could fit on the shelf in the stores. Now, at the same time, people who sold music online were not limited by shelf space in the store. If there were independent artists who couldn't get the CD-ROM pressed and put in a nice case and put up on the wall and sell it for a certain amount, they could sell it for a much lesser amount. I guess this is like the iTunes thing, sell it for $1. So selling it for $1 to the entire world makes you a lot more money than not selling it at all because you couldn't get it published in Sam Goody, carried on the shelf. So that makes more infinite supply when the goods are digital. It's particularly that way when your goods are digital. But there's also infinite searchability. Oh, there's some books. I'm going to bring some books back with me. This one we need to talk about. I'll give you little previews of stuff we need to talk about. That is a very important one. Yeah, that's the one that's going home with me. All right, so I guess that'll tie together a few concepts. So search is getting more perfect all the time, so you can like browse lots of music and short little clips to go through a bunch and make sure that you've been exposed to a lot of music, maybe found something you didn't know you liked through a music explorer. But just as often as not, there's some sort of marketing going on. There's some sort of sales technique going on. Artwork, cover art. I got so much more still to bring here that I'm just not going to spend a lot of time sorting it out all that nice. I'm going to just kind of shove things in because I'll spend time here just sorting. Maybe you can be here while I sort. This again is one of those places where the 80-20 rule comes into effect. It's too easy to spend lots of time now on the wrong things and to violate the 80-20 rule when unpacking. So I guess it's a question of whether it's better to point you out that direction or in this direction. I guess what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly pull stuff out of the car, pile it up in here, and as I do, I'll talk a little bit about influence, the science and practice of persuasion by Robert Cialdini. Cialdini, I'm not sure exactly, but you probably have heard me refer to him a bunch of times. Because it's another seminal book. He is I don't even know if you would call him, I guess, a researcher who, interested in why telemarketers were so effective, for example, made a study of all the rules governing people's behavior. And see, one of the ones that it opens very natural to for me, because I've had it open to here so many times, is commitment and consistency. Commitment and consistency. It sounds like a self-help book, right? It sounds like, you know, how you make your, I use it that way. I use the techniques that marketers use on people to make sure I myself am behaving with, was that upside down? I'm going to be upside down in all this. Oh, I hope I can salvage this. I'll probably do some editing. That'll just add to the charm, won't it? That'll just add to the charm. On target. Here, I'll in target. I know I also had the battery warning, so that's going to be a thing. Whew. All right, so I'll get close to the end here. I do these videos in great part for commitment and consistency. If I say I'm going to do something and I commit to it, to a public audience, much like this, the chances of following through and actually doing it are much greater. It's the same principle as when someone who comes to your door with a petition and puts it in front of you and tries to get you to put your name on it, knowing that you're going to be going to your neighbor, they're going to be going to your neighbor's house, and your neighbors are going to see your name on it in support of that thing. If they can score your name on that, the chances of you carrying through with doing what you said you were going to do are much higher. Commitment and consistency. I am here talking about my plans of what I plan on doing here in a video format where I currently have about 10,000 followers, 10,000 subscribers. And I plan to be having more and more as I become a vlogger of some interest, I don't know. I'm going to walk you through the principles of influence and persuasion. And that's just a preview of what's to come. I guess I'm going to put you back here because it doesn't do much good to be this far into the video and have it crap out because of a battery. I'm probably not even going to edit it. I'll just be upside down for part of the time. Who cares, right? What does it matter? What does it matter? All you need to do is not screw up so bad to the point of unrepair, of no redemption, beyond redemption. Is anyone ever beyond redemption? Has anyone ever screwed up so bad that it can't be taken back? What is the level of screw up that you can't fix it? in my life, one of my clear screw-ups is falling into the trappings of this whole internet thing, trying to build yourself up, right? What does it mean trying to go after 1 million followers? What is it about? What does that, even say about me? Supplemental income? Ego? Altruistic sharing? All of the above? But what I do know, what I really believe, is that the kinds of messages I have to deliver are in fact of interest to a lot of people, that more people should be hearing the kinds of stuff I have to talk about, because I listen to pop culture and I am disgusted by reality TV. I can't believe it's as popular as it is. I can't even give you examples because I avoid it now like the plague. And with all my hesitations in talking, with all my phone droppings and, sub-referencing and sometimes coming out of the nestedness and sometimes getting lost in a deep dive, all that considered, and it's still probably more valuable than most reality TV. Am I wrong? I don't know. I could show you some of the stuff I'm unpacking, which is, I think, of great interest. One of the most interesting things I feel I've ever bought is this gravity light, which you put a rock in the bag, and it's got this lever system. And then you pull the rocks down, or no, you pull this lever down, and this thing is hanging from like a tree or something. And as the rocks pull this down, this light comes on. It powers a light bulb. There's a light bulb in there somewhere. There it is. Or no, that looks like yeah, I guess that's the LED. But this is a light that's powered by just the weight of the, yeah, and there's different ones that can be attached for pointing at different directions. Yeah, that get attached on different ways. Yeah, this is a gravity-powered light. Low battery message. That must mean it's not plugged in over here properly, but I do have this thing for powering it, so I will jiggle all these things and hopefully that'll just keep shooting. We'll see. We'll see. It might just cut out abruptly at some point. It would have already had I not gotten the power connected to it properly at some point. So I gotta stop violating the 80-20 rule. I'm slowing down to talk to you. I'm slowing down to look at things I'm unpacking. So just go, 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 go. IQ Air. This is the best air filter made. It was rated high enough to fight the SARS virus, and I had it going for quite a bit during the lockdown. Oh, I think one of the caster wheels came off. I'll have to find that. Empty box, that goes back. three keyboards of note. I was quite a keyboard dandy for a while. This is DOS keyboard. This was probably my most frequently used at business because I switched from buckling springs to cherry switches, quiet cherry switches. Cherry brown are in here, so you could get the click without the noise. And then probably one of Apple's worst keyboards ever, but for some reason I still own it. It has an interesting look to it, but it was just awful. And then the famous one, the one that I loved, but I had to stop using because at the office, this is just too loud. But for a while, I loved the buckling springs. This is based on the IBM Model M keyboard. And there's actual springs that bend underneath your finger in there. It was an IBM thing. Of all the busting I do on IBM, they had some of the best keyboards ever made. And their version of the mechanical keyboard was better than everyone else's. And the company, when IBM got out of that business, they sold it off to a company, Unicomp. And Unicomp was actually the people from the keyboard factory who loved what they did so much. They bought the company, they bought the factory from IBM when it was getting ready to sell it, getting out of all this hardware business. And I've even talked to people at this company. I forget exactly the issue, but wow. What a great story, what great people, what a great product. If you like clicky keyboards and you don't need those rainbow LED lights, check out the Unicomp Model M. I mean, everyone will know what it is, but technically it's got some other name to it now. I've got such wonderful things, infused with love, infused with love. Super 8 video camera, a gift from my dad. One of the last things my dad ever got for me before he passed away, knowing my interest in the Amiga computer. This was before video was digital. So this used these Super 8 cassette tape looking things in there. And I even have some video of my dad in this format. I will have to move it over at some point to digital format. That's pretty much why I'm keeping this camera. They looked like this, the cassettes that went in it. High 8. Not, I might have said Super 8, but it's High 8. Wow, powerful stuff. I have no idea how interesting or not this is to folks out there, but to me, this is such a blast from the past, part of my history, right down to this bag that I keep it in. Profoundly strong synaptic pathways in my head over this. Do not violate the 80-20 rule. And do not drop a world of stuff on your camera. Dyson vacuum cleaners, really great, except they're expensive and they don't last long enough for the amount of money you put into them. But while they're working, they live up to their marketing hype. Chainsaw. It's amazing the things you accumulate in life. Ah, there's an archery place where I'm moving. There's a good archery place in the park there. So yeah, these will stay in use.